Most people who discover frameworks build one, maybe two. They solve the immediate problem, they feel the improvement, and then they move on. What they miss is the compounding. The first framework you build makes one specific thing better. A client email sounds more like you. A research process produces more defensible findings. A content post hits differently. That's real value, but it's linear value. One framework, one improvement. What happens at framework 10 is different. What happens at framework 50 is different again, and it has nothing to do with having 50 tools to choose from. The value of a framework library isn't the sum of its frameworks. It's what happens when they interact. Your content framework and your voice calibration framework produce different output together than either would alone. Your research methodology framework and your competitive intelligence framework share underlying logic. And once you see that pattern, you start building frameworks that are designed to work together from the start. At framework 10, you start recognizing patterns across domains. You built a client communication framework and a team feedback framework, and you notice they share a core principle. Acknowledge before responding. That principle becomes conscious instead of accidental. The next framework you build inherits it automatically. At framework 50, you start seeing frameworks where other people see problems. Someone describes a workflow they repeat every week, and you immediately see the underlying logic that could be systematized. That pattern recognition isn't something you can teach directly. It emerges from the practice of building frameworks repeatedly until the process becomes intuitive. The framework library compounds your judgment, not your output, your judgment. Stage 1. Tool collection. Frameworks 1 through 10. Each framework is a solution to a specific problem. You build them reactively. Something breaks or feels slow or inconsistent. You systematize it. The value is immediate and local. This is where most people stop. Stage 2. Pattern recognition. Frameworks 10 through 30. You start noticing that your frameworks share principles across domains. The research methodology you built for content research works for competitive analysis with minor modifications. The voice calibration you built for email works for LinkedIn with one adjustment. You stop building from scratch and start extending what already exists. The library becomes an ecosystem instead of a collection. Stage 3. Generative fluency. Frameworks 30 and beyond. You can build a framework for a problem you've never encountered before because you understand the underlying structure of what a framework is and does. You're not borrowing someone else's methodology. You're generating your own from first principles. This is the stage where the library stops being a productivity tool and starts being a genuine competitive advantage. Your reasoning is encoded, your judgment is portable, and every new framework makes every existing one more valuable because the cross-domain connections multiply. The jump from stage 1 to stage 3 doesn't happen all at once. It happens one framework at a time, mostly without you noticing, until the day you look at a problem and the systematic response is automatic. The compounding starts on framework 1. You just can't see it yet. 3 things accelerate it. Build in the same domain twice. Your first research framework and your second research framework will share principles you couldn't have identified before building the first one. The second one will be better and faster to build. Look for the principle underneath. When 2 frameworks work well, ask what they share. That shared principle is worth naming and encoding explicitly. It becomes the foundation of the next 10 frameworks you build. Build across domains. A framework built for tree service client communication will share logic with a framework built for luxury real estate listing descriptions in ways that aren't obvious until you look. Those cross-domain connections are where the most non-obvious insights live. The library compounds because thinking compounds. Each framework makes the next one easier to build and the existing ones more powerful. Your first framework makes one thing better. Your 10th starts to change how you see problems. Your 50th changes how you think. That progression doesn't require talent or domain expertise you don't have. It requires building systematically and paying attention to what the frameworks have in common. The full methodology for building a framework library that compounds is at howtoframework.com. If you want to understand how frameworks differ from prompts before you start building, episode 1 of this series is the place to begin.